Welcome to this session
Yes.
on a quite exciting topic: how to get your startup acquired, how to do it at bigger, bolder valuations, how to do it faster, more successfully. And I'm quite honored to have this panel here today. I think our combined number of exits is around 20, including 2 unicorns, and then of course the unicorn that you are at right now. So let me introduce you here. Yevgeny, the CPO and head of new ventures at Bolt. You have founded and exited your own company in the past, being angel investor. You have portfolio interests, and I think you have some news to announce, maybe if you dare, later during the panel.
Sure.
And I will be asking, so how do you sell companies to Bolt? And I know that you've been acquiring for Bolt as well. Tom, your Open Ocean poker night yesterday was legendary as every single year. And you've been acquiring companies for Nokia when you were not the VC yet. You've had I believe 10 exits, out of which 2 have been unicorns. And what I hear, Santa this year has been particularly good with exits just coming up this Christmas holiday season, right? Yeah. And quite significant ones. And Sten, he's the mastermind behind the Startup Nation policy for the country of Estonia, which of course we all know is the country of unicorns. So Sten, whatever you did right, you did right. And then he's MD for the Exit Academy. For myself, I'm a founding partner of the Exit Academy. And for me personally, it was for very personal reasons when I've had 4 exits in the past. The most recent one was to Rakuten, a world's 6th largest e-commerce company on this planet. And I was really struggling to know how to do it right, even having multiple exits. And yesterday when I was talking to Stefan, one of the founders of Grandom, he said it bluntly: there's 2 types of skills the founders need. The skill to build a business and the skill to exit. So we ain't going to be talking about the skill to build a business. We are going to talk about the skill to exit, to acquire, and to do it better, not to fail when doing this. So one of those things that fires me up is when I talk to the successful founders or investors, and they talk about the successful exits, and even more when they are not embarrassed enough and they talk about how they fucked up the whole exit. But our panelists, I asked you to pick any story that you feel close to your heart and you want to shortly share, whether it's a success or whether it's a failure. Embarrass yourself. Come on.
I can share a story of a failure because I actually sold my company twice. So the first time we put a deal together in 2016, and actually we had 2 bidders. We bid the price quite much up. Then we eventually picked one. Went into signed the term sheet, went into the due diligence process. The due diligence process was absolute nightmare. It took 3 months. It was just very problematic, and then when we were already kind of ending to the point where we had the merger agreement agreed and ending, I was calling shareholders and asking for the wiring instructions, and then we got sued. So we got sued by basically by essentially we're in the United States, so we're in Massachusetts. And we were run afoul of some regulation of how essentially unpaid overtime for our sales. So for our sales team, because it turned out that in Massachusetts, a sales team is considered an overtime, basically.
Let me just quickly ask: was this suing because somebody wanted to get the leverage in your exit process, or was it just
It was just
unrelated?
random coincidence.
Oh.
It was essentially in US like the ambulance chase of lawyers, which just figured out a business model that this regulation in Massachusetts is largely not complied with, and they just went company after company after company and gathered checks. And anyway, and the deal got killed by that. And what actually killed the deal wasn't the lawsuit itself, because exposure was quite limited, but the fact that the bigger company, which was buying as a public company, had exactly the same issue. And so they were worried that that the lawyers will go after them next if they buy it, because they'll be kind of contaminated through these depositions or whatever. And so this killed the deal. And meanwhile, the second bidder, who was also very interested, the guy who wanted to buy got basically fired, and so the whole thing fell apart.
But congratulations that on your second try, you succeeded.
On the second try, completely different set of companies, by the way, completely different set of bidders. Neither of the previous ones were part of that.
All right. Tom, how about your story?
And I mean, of course, if you have even one successful exit, you know that you've had unsuccessful attempts before you got there. So we all have those. Still, the bad ones, bad situations I've seen, and there's been a few, and both in actually investment rounds and in actual exits. I would simplify into two things. And the first one is, and this is assuming you have a great technical solution, maybe hopefully in the market that somebody wants to buy, right? So it's not like you're trying to sell shit, but you actually have something and somebody actually wants to buy you or buy your technology. So the first one has been, I would say, actually chemistry between the founders and leader team and the buyer. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes there's an asshole on this side or an asshole on that side, or it just doesn't work
How about
out. Which side am I the asshole on? but you kind of see when it starts taking long and it starts to degrade and things get too troublesome and little unnecessary details start to kill the what's the expression? The baby goes out with the bathwater almost. So that's one. But this one is a bit more difficult because it's a human one. Then there's the other one, and this I've seen a couple of times, and that's greed. And the only example I will say, and absolutely not saying any company's name there, but we had a company where we were investors. We had a good share of the company. We had only been in the company a few years, so a fairly quick exit. Sorry?
Good luck with that.
Tricking me. And we actually had a bunch of big ones in the industry, and the industry here was a converging play. So the industry was many industries actually. I've never seen as many interested parties. And we had the great big Apple who wanted to buy it, and they had verbally given 200 million. And the greed came in one meeting where the founder CEO, bless him, was in a pitch with the leadership team of Apple. And he said, I want 700 million. And that was it. So greed is probably not always good as long as it's too much greed.
We'll talk about it later, but both of your examples, actually, it's yours is about negotiation tactic, how not to fuck things up, and I'd say things that some can be planned ahead. Sten, you will be announcing something quite significant later, the EU funding to help startups to become more successful in the valuations and exits. But before you will be doing this announcement,
how did I F up? Well, there's two things. So first of all, of course, how many founders are here? Oh wow, quite a few. That's great.
Actually, let me stop you there. Let's do this once more. How many here have done exits acquisitions? Have been experienced? Okay, 2, 3, 4, and I know that you've done acquisitions for Zalando. So, how many have done more than one? All right, and we have 2. This is really cool.
Ralph is my partner from Open Ocean, so that doesn't count in this.
But so 2 things. So first of all, of course, is actually a strategic alignment within your team. In 2009, that was a few years after Netflix started doing streaming. I founded a company that was building hyper secure streaming solutions for majority of clients.
So we were able to put Netflix in a box and ship it out. We had multiple offers to acquire us, and then especially when you're a young founder, you're like, yeah, growth, more clients. Of course, I wouldn't be sitting here if I would sell it, and we totally missed the momentum because of the fact that we didn't have a strategic alignment in the team to take that offer when that offer comes. And I think especially for young earlier founders, you have to spot the momentum when the time is right. It's not the end of your career, it's the beginning. The second thing I want to mention on the corporate side, and we will be announcing with some of our partners, there is Christoph and Marianne and Sarah is somewhere here too, I guess. Yeah, hi Sarah. An exciting funding round for corporate pilots. And if you have been dealing with corporates, of course, the question there is like, how would you get a really good relationship with the corporate? Not for investment, because quite often corporates don't know how to invest. Having run my own fund called StoryTech, we had several times corporates investing and turning out unhappy because they didn't know how to work with the founders. However, if you pilot right and you think about your pilots with corporates and you build a relationship, then the exit can come and hopefully it will be a happy marriage.
And can I chime in there quickly on the alignment? Because as investors, when we invest, we always have that talk. That now after this investment, if something good comes on the table, what is good? We want to be somewhat aligned on that. Then obviously the company evolves. If it goes this way, we might realign downwards. And if it really goes that way, we might realign upwards. And then when there's a new financing round and a higher valuation, we have that discussion again with the founders and essentially with the board. Having said that, they're never perfect discussions. And then if something actually comes on the table, then you need to have a really specific hard talk. But it's very important. It's very important.
Stan for me said something really interesting was if that exit would have been successful, you would not be sitting here and sharing what you learned. And this is something, one reason that gave birth to Exit Academy. The founders, when they share the stories, they don't systemize it. There's no collection of how to do it right. And the founders who fail, who fuck up, they're really embarrassed to share those stories. And of course, these are the most teachable moments. There's so common pitfalls. Then, here in this audience, there have been already some wonderful exits, and congratulations. And there will be some wonderful exits, and congratulations for this. And those will be more wonderful if we can give this tiny bit of this shared knowledge. So is exit a skill? What do you think?
I don't think. Well, there are parts of it which you can affect with skill, but a lot of it is market forces and luck. So, I think it's kind of like a lot of other things, right? That you like. The problem is essentially it's the same kind of partnership or business development as anything else, except your market is limited to like 5 people, right? Mm-hmm. So then it becomes a really personal, because in a typical startup, like it can easily be that in the world the guys who are viable to buy you is like 5 guys, and so if you don't find those 5 guys, and if you don't have a relationship with them, or like if they don't find you, then there's things you can do to affect it, but things you can do to raise the probability of exit by 30% and raise the valuation of exit by 30%, but you won't be able to make one if there isn't if the market forces don't support it, right? You can't work against the market forces.
What's your opinion, Tom?
No, so of course, completely agree. And don't focus on the exit. It's actually my opinion. Prepare for a potential exit, and I'll come to that. But build a great team, and a great team, obviously one that works well together, but also knows something that others maybe don't. That might make somebody want to buy you. Having a great tech solution that might even be differentiated in the market, so somebody wants that in their portfolio. And build a great business, because once the business starts scaling, and you can see how it can scale more with good synergies from a larger buyer, for instance, again, they probably want you. So focus on building the business, but prepare for eventually having an exit. And number one is actually knowing who might be your buyers. Do business development, make sure they know you, have relationships with them, maybe even partnerships. Most of the exits come actually through partnerships that companies have with bigger players.
So do you think the companies are being sold or companies are being bought?
I actually think and I know we might disagree on this one, I think companies are being sold, but they're being sold because they prepare. So they know they have relationships with the potential buyers. Having said that, then the buyer might be somebody you never thought about. So it's tricky to know who they all are. Be exit prepared. Have a data room. Have this alignment of, when is it worth really talking about it. Have advisors kind of in the back of your pocket, so you quickly can assemble lawyers and bankers to help you maximize the exit, stuff like that. So always be a bit prepared. Maybe not when you're totally seed, but when you have a bit of a business.
I definitely think that companies are being bought, not sold. And but to be fair, that all applies to strategic exits. Financial exits are a different animal altogether. And we can talk about them separately. But then the company is being sold. Then there's multiple players. Then it's purely about numbers, lawyers, bankers, data rooms. Any strategic is first and foremost about a business, basically. A business executive, which is for some reason wants it in their portfolio, wants to add the revenue, sees the strat, so on. So corporate development, this is, I think, a big mistake that people do. They think that corporate development banker is important. None of them make those decisions. It is always a business exec which owns some part of the business, which is.
But corp dev might be a way into the exec. But I agree with you there.
It can be, but
So one of the things what you have to cultivate and what's been going around is building excitement and building trust. It's exactly the same way. You have to have your own ally in the system, somebody who believes for you and somebody vouches for you. And look, we've been in past a year or so, we've been financing pilots of quite high ranked startups. One of the things that we lack in the picture is not about the product quality. It's about the opportunity and the ability to create excitement. And to be able to create trust. One of our mentors in our STADIEM program comes from Walt Disney Company, and he was the person for acquiring. He was like, "Can I trust you? My head is on the line. I would like to acquire you, but what type of relationship would you build me around product, around your ability to deliver and the ability to generate value?" And this is something that you can actually learn and strategically build. Yes, of course, it's all about deal rooms and products and financial aspects, but you have to also understand that there is a person that will acquire you.
So I like it. I like when the panel has disagreement, and we'll do the proper fight afterwards outside.
I don't think we disagree.
I'm disagreeing. I'm going to disagree now. As
I disagree that we disagree.
I truly think that the startups are being sold, and selling them is a skill. It's exactly the same as if any of you are B2B startups. You have to have a skill how to do B2B sales. Exit is just another B2B sale, just a higher ticket. You have to know how to approach the right buyers. You have to be able to identify the right buyers. You have to create the trust, position your startup in the right way, and then go through the negotiation, closing, and all of that process. And your probability of getting it sold increases multiple fold instead of just sitting back and waiting if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm interested." Go out there actively, constantly. But that
this we do agree about, right? I just think building the business is more important. Then you can fine tune. When you get to certain scale, tens of millions in revenue, good quality revenue, it's not a question of can you exit. It's only a question of who can you exit to and at what value. And there, obviously, if you're better prepared and so on, and if you position yourself better, you'll get a much more attractive deal.
So I think what place we disagree is how much you can actually affect. Like I said, I think by 30% you can affect the probability and the valuation for sure. But multifold, I'm not.
Fair enough.
I think
it's a quantity difference, not quality.
We won't at this stage. We won't impact the exit valuation by 10x. But actually, I'm really thinking up to 3x. It can be, but 30% we all agree.
Yes.
Over time, probably. But let's say at that moment, so one thing you have to do when somebody wants to buy you is you have to be able to go to the other potential buyers and say, "This is the last chance." and you get one of them to throw in an offer, and guess what? That offer, if it's even about the same as the other one, you can then go back to the other one and push it up.
So what affects the valuation more?
And exactly. This I've seen many times, and I would say typically 25 to something %. But of course, you might get lucky, and you might even double if it gets crazy. You might get lucky. But over time, I've seen much more.
Sten, when startups take a step back before you get closer to an exit, and for example, B2B startups, they do pilots with the corporates, they start this partnership. How many of those pilots fail?
It's a good question. By percentage, I don't know, but a lot of pilots, if they're unprepared, fail. And I think also one of the core things there is that you have to actively cultivate corporates for pilots. And let me do a little bit of a pivot here. So Europe is. Let's talk about Europe. Europe is full of those mid-sized corporates. They want new products and services. I have been talking to many of them. The big ones in top 1% of France, or some of the telcos here in the region. I don't mention which names they are. They're all like, hey guys, we want like products and services. And then the question is like, they don't have money to develop those products and services themselves. They're actively looking out in the market. They would like to acquire because they need those products and services. And then what happens? How do you go there? If you jump in, just through the door and say like, here's my product and buy it, most likely it will just fail. You have to basically go and do right pilots. And you have to actually cultivate that mindset where your activity and both the corporate are basically able to generate value from that activity. Usually, depends on a pilot, maybe 6 months or up to a year or so forth. And when that's demonstrated, you're able to move up in the ladder.
I'll show in some statistics, and then we can move on to the next topic: how to build on top of those statistics.
Let me just give us statistics. So we've just kicked off almost a year ago a piloting project called STADIEM. In the STADIEM project, we have partners such as NMA, the funds, the early stage fund for Hamburg, Media City Bergen, a cluster of 100 plus VRT, whereas they're in Belgium, and then us as core partners. And basically, the whole idea is that you can come to us with a corporate pilot. Depending on your staging, we're able to finance up to 150k euros for your pilot with a particular corporate. Right, you could think that, maybe this is, an attractive offer for startup. Yes, competition was 100 to 1. When I went to talk to corporates about those, big corporates suddenly come to us. This is exactly what we want. We want to actively test, validate, and build those relationships. The hunger to work with, able startups is really there. The question is like, how do you do it right and turn it into a pilot mindset and later into an exit mindset as well?
So when Tom was saying most of those exits kind of will be born out of the pre-existing partnership with the corporate, when it takes to statistics about the success of what happens after the exit, the PMI, post-merger integration, 60 to 80% of acquisitions will fail. Okay, so before that, depending on the funding stage, angel round, 90% of startups fail, and VC round, 70% startups fail to return the investors' money. And surprisingly, that 70% is almost as close to to the rate where corporates integrate the startups or corporates do the pilots with the startups. 60-70% of pilots fail, 80% of acquisitions fail because they don't know how to work together. And now, take this rate, so 100 startups start their life. 10 will get to successful exit, few of them IPO, most of them strategic. And only 2 of them will remain alive to improve our lives. That is a lousy statistic indeed. And on top of this, the median average exit valuation here in Europe is not obviously a unicorn. It's just 17 million euros. Which takes me a little bit to the question, you investor guys, is like less than 50x return on investment even close to being acceptable? How about 30x or 30% return on the investment?
but it depends. Like as an angel, it's super like I'm both in an angel and a fund. As an angel, it's super acceptable to me because like I invest my own money. I don't have any fixed timeline. I don't have LPs to worry about. I don't have it like so for me like it's okay. But for the fund, of course, you need to return the whole fund. So there you need a few home runs, right? And it's not that they're acceptable, it's just the way you make the fund back, right? And there's no other way. But since I don't have to make the fund back as an angel, then I care much less, actually.
So you're sitting right here and you whispered before that you have an exit in process as we speak.
Yeah, actually, as an angel, I have my first exit. In the venture fund, we had a few exits, but as an angel, I have my first exit. It was a very fast one. I invested kind of within this year, and the return is like quite decent, like several X's, like not quite 10x, but several X's. So it's and to be fair, it's very cool to have the first exit, but I'm not terribly excited about it because I like kind of one dynamic you have as an investor that you kind of you basically you don't care about the fund like you do a venture, but you care about increasing your net worth, right? And so you invest, let's say, whatever 1% of your net worth, and then actually, if you triple it, then you just made 2% extra. So it's like, okay.
So you say you are not excited; it was less than 10x excessive. How about the founders?
The founders are very excited. They're but of course they also they're getting very decent outcomes, and they're very happy. And yeah, so that's cool.
Let's give the voice to the audience.
I would like to hear you talk about why the valuation is so low in Europe. Is it because there's too much competition? Once you pump in money into a company, is it too much competition, or does this company is it unable to protect its turf in a way, or why is the valuation low? Or if it's only in Europe, and what's the difference between listing and selling in your opinion?
That's what I guess.
Actually, between listing as in IPO, you mean? Getting a company listed on the stock market.
Yes.
Yeah. This is our next topic. So strategic exits versus getting listed, getting into fire sale.
Okay, can I answer this? So there's two things. So the first thing is basically it's the corporate side, and European corporates just don't have very good experience of doing it. Only a few have, and that's why we need projects such as ours, the STADIEM projects, where you can build on the excitement of the corporate, and you can actually build on the excitement of the startup. The thing is that a lot of European corporates. I mean, when I went with our fund proposal to a top 1% vertical company in France, they are very, very big. And then the manager that was so excited, he told me what his annual budget is for basically looking at startups. That's a few €100,000. I can't tell you exactly the number.
Can I interrupt? So the problem is not the problem is that the people buying are too poor. They have too little money.
No. But the point basically is, the thing is that if he basically disperses that money, and he doesn't have a working system to deliver value through pilots or etc., then he can't really also jump up his budget. If he has a very good piloting cadence and funnel where value is demonstrated, those acquisitions become much more meaningful. Another corporate partner of us invested like annually money, but the capability for them to manage the portfolio was zero. And then they were like, hey, give us good pilots so we can see if there's alignment with our internal teams, and then we can acquire.
Can I mix a few things here? Also your question, but first actually, is it acceptable? So of course, as a venture capital investor who tries to provide huge returns to our investors, we are also investors in our funds ourselves, so to ourselves as well. Very strong ambitions, but failing is okay, because even in the world's best funds, 50% fail. Small exits are okay, because then somebody hopefully makes at least a little bit of money, as long as we get that one or two really big exit. And I'll come to the IPO and so on as well. So in our first fund, the 2011 fund, small fund, 45 million euro, we have kind of the classical good fund distribution. We have one IPO, Truecaller from Sweden, 4.8 billion in market cap approximately today. Just went public a couple of months ago. So amazing. That one makes, depending on when we get all of our money out, we've gotten a good chunk already, and it's already a profitable fund just based on Truecaller. But 3.5 to 4.5 times the fund from that one company. So that's the classical how to make a good fund is having at least one of those. Mm-hmm. Then we have 3 that are in the few hundreds of millions as exits go. And that means another 1.5 to something the fund. So suddenly we have a 5 to 6x fund. We actually think it's going to end up at 7, which is top 10, 15%, at least in Europe, maybe even globally. So great fund. Luck is involved, and here I come to markets drive exits. So we had in this fund, we had for the last 4 years before 2021, we had 1 positive exit per year. They were smallish, they were 2-3x profitable, nothing exciting for a VC, because we're still not bringing the fund to profit with that. And obviously we only also make money if we do that. So they were okay because somebody made a little bit of money and they contribute to the end result. But then 2021, everybody knows it's a hot market. It's terrible to buy, invest now, but it's great to sell. So we've had in this quarter alone 3. So Truecaller was 1 and 2 strategics, and we have a 4th one closing. So as many in the quarter. Is it because we are so brilliant? I hope a little bit, but no, but of course we have great companies. I mean, one that's getting bought has 100 million in revenue, it does 20 million in profit. You know that company will be bought eventually. So there are great companies, but the market, absolutely 50% of that is just that the market is hot and people come and ask, can we buy your company for a lot of money? And we're like,
yes. There's actually a very interesting dynamic which is not well understood from corporates. That if you're a corporate, that you actually know when the market is hot, you know your stock is overpriced. This is free money. Okay, so I have free money. Okay, what is the best way that I can fastest leverage that free money? Buy some companies. It's literally
and
comes
the
down
revenue multiplier that's maybe a bit lower than my own, exactly. And then I get a premium on it.
Yeah, I get a premium, so I'm building up value, right? So this is how corporates literally think: is that when they're overpriced, this is absolutely opportunity for them to buy up companies because it comes down to cost of money.
Yeah. But I have no answer on what's wrong with strategic exits and IPOs. But my point is, the IPO, this was the first IPO in my life as a venture capitalist. We've done it 10.5 years at OpenOcean. I had Holtron Ventures back in the day that invested in MySQL and had a great fund because of that. But this is like practicing 20 years of venture capital, so they don't come often. Yes, we read about lots of IPOs being done there, but that's from tens of thousands of companies. A few do an IPO, so that's number one. They are rare, and they're great when they happen, of course. Then the other on the strategics is a strategic exit is so much easier if things align a little bit than an IPO. An IPO takes 1 to 2 years just to prepare. If you get to that scale of business ever that you even can do it. A strategic exit, there was one that closed yesterday. So it was signed, closed, and the money was wired yesterday, and the entrepreneur was happily at our poker tournament. So that one happened in less than 2 months from contact. Everything went like this. Mm-hmm. We were prepared. The entrepreneur is great. They really wanted the asset. There was competition. On Friday, I think it will be public. But it was fast because it was strategic and there was high demand. But so
when it comes to IPOs, I think those startups don't really need our help. They can hire the best minds how to do the IPO right. However, the strategic exits, they're the kind of guys that need to know how to do it right, and if there's only 5 buyers out there, how not to fuck up all 5 of them. It's for most of the founders and the investors even, there's like once of a lifetime chance.
I'm sorry, by the way, quickly. IPOs, very rare. Strategic exits can be faster and as big, in the best case. Private equity, if you have any scale of your business, 10 million plus in revenue, today the biggest buyer of companies is private equity. They will pay a slightly lower price, but you will sell to private equity if you have a good company. And then the last piece is, as part of private equity transactions or just big venture rounds, obviously secondaries are huge. We sold in Truecaller a couple of times for really good valuations before it went public to make our fund already profitable in secondaries. Okay? And as entrepreneurs, I would say in half of the investments we're involved with, the entrepreneurs sell for maybe $1 million early on and then maybe even 10 million later on in secondaries. So entrepreneurs make a good life already before the exit has happened.
So you said the exit that was currently running and everything went smoothly, the process was super short. And I'd like to give an example of how startups and corporates fuck up the exit process. Is they miss the window of opportunity. My own story, I was acquiring a startup in the Netherlands. They agreed to term sheet, valuation, founder was quite happy. And he didn't know how to do the data room for due diligence. So he took some time putting the documents together. I had my next board meeting, and the board is super excited. We're acquiring a company, the first for us at the time, and asked me, so how's it going? And I said, well, the founder just called and said, I need 2 more days to put this together. And my next board meeting comes, and we have one of the board members who needs to leave early, catch the plane, so we postponed the discussion. The third board meeting, I have some internal fires to put out, so we postponed. You know where this story goes. He didn't know how to do the data room. He delayed by 2 days. And that, just the whole deal fell through because of this. And that's a recurring example because they don't know how to do quite common things. They fail in valuation or they fail in the exit altogether.
Heikki, can I say something quite ugly? I mean, as you as an entrepreneur is, again, I'm referring back to what we have seen in the last year. You really have to ask yourself, and do a reality check. And I know you want to all build the product, but the product is really the baseline in a kind of a sense. The product needs to deliver, but you also have to, in that type of scenario, as Heikki said, that you always have to be ready, and you have to be mindful of, the scenarios which are ahead of there. If you are clear that by year 3 or year 4 you're stalling and you're not growing, then what is your opinion, and you have to be very very clear on this. Either you have a capacity to take it forward with a partner, aka with a corporate partner. You either want to sell it and take that experience and create a new company and attempt for a faster growth, or then you just have to die and there is occasionally the reality check that's not really there is that first of all you have to run a company and not only do your product, and you have to also then see who are the partners of the company, whether you're investors, corporates, or your potential exit partners, and that ability needs to be cultivated from day one, I think.
Can you guys give some more of those examples of the common pitfalls or these magic tips that when you went through the exit and you realized I'm doing something great, it actually improved the situation quite a bit?
Well, we talked about the preparedness and so on, but actually, I mean,
this
truth, and we already mentioned it here, but there's this truth in exits that always get some competition going, and you will get a better deal. And not only will you get a better deal, but you will get a higher certainty of the deal that you're doing closing because they know there is competition. And many good things come with competition. It's really hard to get that competition going, but I can tell you from several cases, when you really get the competition and the other party, the buying party, knows that there's somebody else who's ready to do it, things get so much easier. It's an easy thing to say, it's a hard thing to do, but it's absolutely worth it.
Timing is tough here because basically ideal time to sell is when you know that the company will stall, but it's not stalling yet. Because once the company is stalling, it's actually a bad time to sell because it won't be exciting. So if your company is growing, but you're seeing the leading indicators that the future is not so bright, that's the perfect time to sell.
And hope that in due diligence the acquirer won't find it.
They won't. Nobody will see that ever. This is impossible. Unless they have their own business like that and they see the same signs for some reason, they will never see it.
How about the terms? I mean, you investors, you sell the startup and it's a done deal. You will get the money in the bank account unless there's some warrant is still ongoing. But the founders, they often have the terms with earnouts and golden handcuffs, and from founder perspective, on paper the exit looks good. But if they then don't stay until the end of those golden handcuffs in the earnout period, they won't actually get the full amount. And what I hear, about 60% of founders leave before the earnout period is full, so they actually leave money on the table. And what is often not told about exits is we all look at founders, oh my God, they're so successful, they exited. What is not told is what happens this post-exit period. They have put their life laser focused into the baby, and suddenly their life has no purpose. So instead of this happy exit, they'll have the period of depression. I don't know if you went through this or you were like active.
Happiest day in my life.
Yeah.
Like right above there from the birth of my two daughters. But I was very lucky because I was fired on the day of the exit. So like I didn't have
Congratulations.
Resigned. I didn't stay with the company.
What did you do in the exit party?
Oh my God, this is shrouded in mystery now. I didn't stay with the company, which was great because I was extremely tired from the exit process, and I just basically, I basically just kind of. For me, it was very interesting because for me, that company was over that day. Like whatever happened afterwards, that was something else. So like mentally, I switched that this is no longer my baby. This is now whatever. This is a company now. It's somebody else's. Like I'm out of it. And it was a really interesting mental switch. I know that not every founder goes through that. People experience it very differently. But yeah, I sold it, bought a house, and then went and traveled around the world for 6 months.
It's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I want to turn the discussion a little bit on.
But on the
Go
terms. Let me say on the terms. So generalizing and simplifying. But obviously, if you do an IPO as a founder, okay, you might have made money already before the IPO, as discussed in secondaries. But of course, you will have a lockup, like 12 months or something, no doubt, because you are one of the reasons they allow you to take it public and public investors to invest in your company. If you get bought by a public company like Walt just got bought by DoorDash, I don't know the exact terms, and I've actually tried to talk to some of the founders, but even some of them don't even know yet if they're not like the active operator funded. But probably they will have a very long lockup as well, because they're a part of being bought. If you get bought by private equity, you get money and you have to invest half of the money you get, typically, not always, back into the company, and you have to be there for years. So this depends very much. Final comment on terms is when the market is as hot as it is today, even in the private equity case, you have to invest less. I have a buddy who just sold a company. He actually didn't have to invest anything back into the company because they so much wanted this company. And then when it's a strategic buyer, when I was buying companies for Nokia, I would never buy a company unless there is a holdback of the value of the founders. There's retention bonuses for the team and so on. I would be very tough about this because that's why we buy them. I've seen now exits where there's almost none of that. And I'm literally like, they don't want the team. Why do they buy it? But anyways, but it really depends on many things.
What would be your advice to startups? How to sell the company to bond? I'd like to get under the skin of how the acquirers think.
So the way I approach it, I don't buy companies. I build business. And one of my jobs at Bolt is putting together our like multi-vertical strategy, meaning like how do we expand the business into new segments, right? So like when I joined 3.5 years ago, we only had ride-hailing. Now we have food delivery. We have car sharing, scooters, like the whole shebang. So the way I approach it, I have like a giant roadmap which has like 50 plus potential verticals which we have going, like, and I went first through high level, then we went and did a deeper analysis on those which we find good potentials. I have mapped out like what business we can even go to in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years unless something major changes in technology or market. And I also have mapped out what do they think, what is our in-house expertise, what is the external expertise we want. And now for every such decision, I can do a build partner buy analysis. So some of the stuff I want to build in-house, some of the stuff I will want to find a partner. and partner for us is really rare, and some of the stuff I want to buy. And buy for us also is quite rare, actually. We are very biased towards building because we just believe that it's hard to find companies of the kind of level that we want to buy. So I've looked, and so now whenever I look, and like before talking about corporate development, the corporate development is really good at screening and kind of just introducing potential deals. So I see, like, let's say a few deals a quarter, a few potential deals a quarter, and most of them just right away don't even fit in that roadmap. I don't even care about them. Some of them loosely fit in that roadmap. I'm like, okay, I will send like 3 questions, and based on that, understand, okay, do they fit, do they not fit? And basically, the depth of my analysis will depend on like how well do they fit with the strategy. And then for some of them, they're fitting, and then we'll do deeper analyze. Okay, but what is the return of investment for us? And then we're going to do this build, usually build versus buy. And most typically, we'll come back and say, okay, it's easier for us to build. Most typically. So we have done only 1 acquisition so far. There's maybe a couple more right now in the works. That I don't know, have 50% probability of completion. All of them are relatively minor, but we also looked at some pretty big deals and tried to figure out which were strategic for us, and try to figure out the structure that the price would make sense, and the price just didn't make sense, right? So this is how I look.
Tom, some of those startups in the portfolio are relatively large, but let's look at the not tiny ones, but like smaller ones. Would it make sense for the startups to grow through acquisitions?
As in them acquiring others.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It doesn't happen that much, but it does happen here and there. MariaDB has bought a couple of companies that have been more technical pieces for a broader database offering for the large enterprise. And it happens here and there. Absolutely. I think my guidance would be actually to myself and our portfolio that we should think about it more than we do.
You said before that some acquirers here in Europe are simply too poor to acquire anything.
I was reading about Terranos yesterday.
Oh, cool.
So what,
Yes.
is that the problem, that they are afraid of that the product really doesn't work? Or?
I'd put it into the budget, into the bucket. Every startup exits at one point, one way or the other. But coming back to acquisitions topic is I strongly believe every startup can be exited, and not just by going into administration, but also that startups and smaller companies can acquire efficiently. There's ways to finance the acquisition, and there's ways to do the terms of acquisition in a way that doesn't require a lot of cash expenditure. I've replaced myself as a CEO in my previous company, and then we were acquiring the company in New York. And the valuation they asked was a bit crazy for us. So my CEO says, well, we're going to go ahead with this acquisition. If they're going to tell me the valuation, I'm going to tell them the terms. If they're going to say 10 million, it was a small acquisition. If they're going to say 10 million, I'm going to set the terms, and payment terms $1 a day. And you know what? The terms we got was we had some upfront cash payment, and the rest we negotiated that at the time when my previous company exits, we'll pay a portion from that exit proceedings. And I honestly thought, God, the investors, it's a really bad deal for them. The investors were super happy as our exit came just months honestly unexpectedly, just months after, and they got the super good deal out of this. And I got to acquire a company that was one of the fundamental reasons my company got acquired. So it was like a chess play that worked out really well, but I wish somebody would have taught me this chess play earlier on.
And of course, it depends on what you want to buy, right? Mm-hmm. You need, like MariaDB actually has bought technical pieces that fit in a bigger puzzle. Another company I work with, Lido, here in Finland, conversational bots, almost AI, will have AI. So they've been looking at acquiring AI talent. And we've had a couple of things on the table. It just hasn't worked out, so they don't really have that talent yet. But it really depends as well what you want to buy. There it was more looking at the people. So very small teams with really good conversational AI talent.
Some of the questions from the audience. I'm also aware of the time. So Sten, I'd like to give a word to you so that you can do the official EU funding announcement, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So Sten, how about
Sure.
what
So, we've been talking about skills here quite a lot, right? And, how do you get corporates on board? How do you get great pilots? How do you get this exit traction going? So, we're very happy to announce today the second round of our STADIEM project. So, there is also Christoph and Marianne and Sarah and her colleagues if you want to hear more about the LP's perspective on the project. So, in a nutshell, this is a project that finances pilots of MediaTech, content tech, startups, and corporates. We're giving out 2 times 40 tickets. The first 40 were already given out, and you can receive from us, thanks to EU, up to 150k euro for zero equity financing for your pilots. The project runs on 4 stages. So first you have to find a corporate through a match stage and get a letter of intent. Then you go into B-step, like Evgeny was saying, benchmarking really if you are in love, or how hot that love is and how that marriage is supposed to come out. Then we'll finance your integrate status, where you can actually plug things in, and then finally only a few ones can max out that 150k.
But I understand for the EU, even though this is limited only to MediaTech B2B vertical, for the EU, the purpose of this is not to help those 40 or 80 startups. The purpose for the EU is to find scalable methodology to make exits.
One of the things what we really found out, that of course besides that money, you'll get really great upskilling from us. We have amazing corporate networks in Scandinavia, in Belgium, in Germany, in Norway, in other territories as well. So you can tap into those corporate networks and skill sets. The excitement, but actually, to be very honest, came to me as a big surprise on the corporate side, is really great, because the guys come to us like, hey, that's amazing. We can look into tech. Somebody leveraged the risk from us. Like, let's play ball. So and then of course we have great mentors talking about exits, but also corporate alignment, how corporates make decisions, how to do your B2B sales, how to achieve that alignment, storytelling, momentum, and so forth and so forth. Check out stadium.eu. We're opening applications today.
You told me secretly before some tips specifically for the investors to enhance their portfolio companies' applications.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the other thing there is that this is very much open to investors as well. We'd really like to approach this on a portfolio basis, because those pilots can definitely if you are an investor, they can optimize your portfolios as well. Well, guess what? Last year we also did a little research among some of European top tier investors, that had invested 2 billion. So guess what comes as the number one kind of need from the investor side? Actually, that would be interesting to hear from Evgeny and Tom as well. Like, if you're investing in startups, what your portfolio startups need as number one?
Ooh, tough one. There's a lot of needs.
Yeah, but just
I don't know if there's a number one. It all depends on the startup.
The biggest value I feel an investor can help with is actually finding the right people who can take them forward, or finding new customers who actually then help them grow the business. It's difficult to do because you can easily fail on both accounts, but
bringing expert skills to do better sales.
What do you think?
I think the most value I at least create is I usually help them understand their markets better and set the right strategy. Because I've seen so many of those, and I'm like, basically I'm a professional strategist, so like I usually work with startups to help them improve their business.
So this is exactly what we found out. Number one was basically scaling and markets. Money was somewhere like really down the drain. So how do you actually scale? You have to go to other markets and you have to pilot. And then if you pilot right, then hopefully you can get that exit date going.
So for you, hopefully it can help you use tens of thousands of startups to become more successful, more competitive, but also the EU's corporates to acquire more. It shouldn't be the world where Google waltzes into an event like SLUSH, or Facebook last time was saying, we come to Europe to acquire European startups. EU would like European corporates to acquire more startups.
But let's also not forget that just the size difference is still very large. Like the largest EU tech company is SAP, which is I think 150 billion market cap, whereas the Microsoft and Googles of the world are like more than 10 times bigger, right? So very much like I think by the way what you were saying before, how much leverage you have over an exit actually very much depends. What percentage of the market cap is the company spending on you? The smaller that percentage is, the more such companies are, the more leverage you have over them, right? And so this is why when you're doing an exit, like when you're doing a 10 million exit, sure, you have a massive amount of leverage. You can do a lot. If you're doing a 7 billion exit, then I think this exit skills matter very little. Like just it's gonna be there's gonna be 3 guys. It's gonna be all about the market forces and the state of the market at the moment, and kind of the skills themselves, like they matter so.
So I'd like to start wrapping up, and we'll have a few questions from the audience. Because this event collects the people who are all interested in the same topic, and that SLUSH is difficult to meet. We'll have a little bit time after that to mingle, and you can ask your private burning questions from the panelists. But wrapping it up, I do think Exit for a startup is just like getting product market fit, whereas your startup is the product. And the market are those 5 potential acquirers. And what you want to do is to make sure that your startup speaks to those potential acquirers with the deepest pockets and for the most strategic needs. And over the years, you build your North Star to build yourself into that corner when it comes to strategic exits. And of course, you build valuable business while doing this. And as such, it becomes like a flywheel. It's not a prediction, it's a fact. As founders and investors will have more knowledge how to do exits correctly, fail less at these, get higher valuations, more founders will be successful. They'll go and found more successful companies. The investors who put money into those will be more successful and put more money into this. So if we can improve the exit chances just tiny bit, it's going to be like this huge flywheel to improve the world. As the Exit Academy, there's the STADIEM program, you all heard, with Speed Invest and Techstars, we are running the event series for investors, how to make the portfolio exits more successful. And yes, let's get a few questions in. Go ahead.
So I think today, you all mentioned that you're of the opinion startups have to prepare, they have to, really work on finding product market fit, time to sell themselves. But at some point, I guess from the founder's perspective, you need to make the active decision to invest your time, your energy into preparing for that, to go down that road, as opposed to, looking into an IPO. And you mentioned some things in terms of foreseeing kind of before the company starts to stall, right? But what are some of the signals, right? Like as a founder, you're going through financing, your team is growing, everything is moving up. Does it sometimes hit you that maybe you're not aiming high enough to go for not an IPO as an end game versus preparing for an M&A instead?
I'll chime super quickly in with one thing, which is I think the most frequent feedback I give to founders, and I'm on a lot of boards, is actually that you're not aiming high enough. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to do with IPO or M&A or whatever, but just like expand your thinking of how big a business you can build. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you will get better people in, you will maybe get more and better financing in, and you will accelerate things. Obviously, it does increase the risk as well. And it comes selfishly from the venture capital model of having to get those big companies. But that's the kind of founders we want to invest in. But that's actually the probably single biggest comment I always have, that, hey, here we could do it faster. Here we could actually, believe it or not, spend the money faster. It doesn't mean that you have to spend like crazy. You have to spend smart. Anyways. Doesn't fit for everybody.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about when you mentioned Google and the valuation. Perhaps it's the ownership, that the ownership of these products and ideas are not with the owners. That you don't own the product. If you can have companies come in and say, "Oh, who can buy your product?" and if you put the high enough, then the company can say, "Okay, well, we'll do it ourselves." But then you don't have ownership of the product. So if you have a unique product, you own the market.
So the IP, for example, IP protection or the secret knowledge that they cannot have. Something like this, you mean? The question was, I guess, you would be the right person. Build it or buy it.
I don't quite understand, honestly, the question. the way normal corporate, like, so the thing is that you have to understand that first. So corporates are very different. And they're like, I actually always assume that corporates are run well. There are some really badly run corporates where actually the reason to do an acquisition is because doing the acquisition will get promoted. This is totally a viable case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and this is, by the way, again, where these business skills will matter much, much more. Never heard.
No.
No.
So
Anyway, right.
we had a question there.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're good. No. Yes, so you mentioned that there might be, say, 5 people in the world that can acquire your company. Do you have any advice on how to make sure that you're on those people's radars? Because it feels like...
Can I answer this?
Yes.
Okay, so at one of our STADIEM workshops, like, this Disney executive said rightfully, like, how do you position yourself? Are you really positioning yourself based on your product as a market leader in excellence? Like, are you the most, are you the person around excellence? Would the corporate come to you and say, like, I trust you so well, you're doing a great job. You're basically solving the project. I know that you know your stick. We have, I can trust you my data. I can trust you my internal pipeline. I can have a conversation with you. And that needs to be common product. I'll tell you an example, Vimeo. Like the Vimeo executive sales team is that I've acquired for them a lot of like enterprise stuff. It's not cheap, but their sales team and their upper management team is so good that we occasionally have conversations just what is going on. And by basically building your capacity as a founder based on your product excellence, you will get, if you truly are excellent, you will reach out to those people because you are in the same vertical and they want to have a conversation with you. Plus, of course, the other tactics of, finding them out, networking, and et cetera, but you have to basically be a legit partner to have that conversation.
But in that it's kind of like, typical sales marketing, whatever task, right? So if you know who those 5 people are, okay, what do they read, right? What do they want to see? Or do they read TechCrunch articles? Okay, I'm going to work on getting a TechCrunch article. I'm going to position it. And one thing I think people are doing wrong is that they're positioning these TechCrunch articles for customers. Only investors and strategics read TechCrunch. So whatever you write there shouldn't be positioned about how exciting, how much value you create for the customers. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares. Right there, why you're an exciting business to invest to and buy, right? And even like kind of these biases, they already make a difference, right? Because if you position it correctly, if you think like, then this will help you find those people. They'll find you. They'll find you. Right?
The part I don't completely agree with is the 5. Sometimes it ends up being those 5, right? But every time we invest, we also have this discussion of who might the buyers be. We list them, we look at who are the people in the business units with a product fit that maybe want to. We do an analysis like this and also then together with the company we invest in. And that list is, maybe there's 5 that are most important, but that list is always 10 to 20 already at this stage. And then over the time of the startup, it obviously changes as the startup changes. And when they get so big that they have a BD chief who creates these relationships that hopefully turn into business, right? And then partnership and then maybe acquisition. Those BD chiefs have relationships typically with tens, if not 100 companies that they try to build, and some of them become business, right? And then maybe one becomes... So the sphere of this is quite large. And then the final icing on the cake is that a very large amount of the time, then the acquirer is actually somebody who was not on the list. Yeah. Because markets are digital, dynamic, and changing like crazy.
This is true. Usually this list, 30, 40, you have a larger list. The thing is that acquisitions rarely happen, and they do happen, but just, I would say 80% of acquisition happen if they're super obvious. Like it has to be, they're just
I give 50. I give 50.
50. Okay. I seen 80, but okay.
65 is there.
but yeah, most of them are like super obvious, and then the remaining come on the left field where this 30, 40, 50 become relevant. But for most acquisitions, like they will be with the 5 guys who are like immediately obvious that okay, there's a business case there, right? And you can see it, and this is also it's the other way around as well. As an acquirer, when I talked, my preferred way of doing discovery is 15 minutes talking to the founder. That is the most effective way. Like if I can cut out the investment bankers from the conversation, that alone saves me 5 hours of time. So 15 minutes with the founder, and if it's not immediately obvious how we both are winning from this, then why bother
Well, I'll give you an example from this one, the fourth one this quarter that is in the closing phases. So we had, that was a proactive exit process. So a company does almost 100 million, is very profitable. It was time to exit. Hired bankers over a year ago, started preparing, very long process. Also with the so-called vendor DD process, which means that we hire consultants and whatever who put the whole DD package together. They do customer interviews. They validate that the customer interviews they've done and we paid shitloads for are true and so on. And the buyers can just go in and listen to the transcripts of the customer interviews and don't need to do it because we knew we were going to go out broadly. So there were over 100 companies that this process went to. We had more, we actually had 2 rounds of bidding. We had more than 10 who bid.
Wow.
And in the final round where there were 7 or 8, 2 of the, half private equity, half strategics, 2 of the strategics, nobody had heard of. The bankers had, but the company, us investors, and there are many investors on the board as well, nobody had heard of this. And it was like, who are these guys? Oh, they're worth 2 billion. And then we looked at it and then they talked to them and it actually made sense. So it's not easy to forecast.
One last caveat is that sometimes companies will have plans that you don't know of, right? So you know what business company has, but you don't know what plans they have to expand their business, and that you can never see. And this is where, this is the hidden iceberg. This is what you cannot predict.
At this point, though, now that the discussion started to be heated, we will need to wrap it up. We have few minutes here to mingle. And at each of those events, what really makes me proud, because all of you are here because you either went to sell some of your portfolio companies or get acquired as startup founders. Well, I'm honored to have some of the future very wonderful exits in this room, and hopefully a few unicorn exits right here in this room. And you gave me a chance to get to meet you at the early days. Get yourself coffee, meet the panelists, and thank you.